no, I'd very much be dead. And in fact, there was no medical explanation after my open heart surgery of how I was alive prior to it. I had less than 0.2 centimeters for blood to flow through my aortic valve, and that's considered not enough flow to sustain life.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of The Greatest Comeback, a podcast that explores the transformational power of adversity and how it can be the catalyst for our growth, healing, and becoming the greatest versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Luke Francis, and I'm very excited to have today's guest on the show. 4 years ago, while sitting in meditation, Regan Caruthers received 2 messages. The first directed her to move home to Missouri from where she was living in Santa Cruz, California. The second advised her to go and see a doctor urgently. Regan, whose early childhood was informed by practices like meditation and Tai Chi, heeded that advice. And it's very fortunate that she did, because when she did see that doctor, she was given the worst news that anyone can ever receive. She was dying. Formerly a fast-charging Silicon Valley software executive, now an author, inner life coach, spiritual teacher, and founder of the Asset Yoga Center, Regan, I'm delighted to say, is still very much with us and is with us today to share her story of not just coming back from that prognosis, but coming back from a life that she describes was built for survival, and how even in our darkest times, we can rediscover the magic within. Regan Caruthers, welcome to The Greatest Comeback.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being here.
Regan, I want to start with your childhood, because it sounds like it was a very different childhood to most childhoods, in that you were educated in an unconventional way, in an unconventional school, and grew up surrounded by teachers and adults who talked about things like consciousness and divine love, and who encourage you to undertake these strange practices like meditation and Tai Chi. What sort of school did you go to, and what was your childhood like?
Yeah, my childhood was filled with contrast. My mother was the greatest love I've known. I mean, what she could radiate out of her being was magical, and she didn't know how to regulate the power that she was connected to. And so she made tragic choices, diagnosed herself as a manic depressive in 1961, when it wasn't quite in the clinical vernacular. She just grabbed it out of the air. She could do stuff like that. So she made, tragic choices from a dysregulated place. But one of the great decisions she made was to enroll me in the school that you briefly described. So at the age of 3, I found myself in this magical environment. I mean, I didn't know it was magical. I mean, what did I know? It was all that I knew, right? But it was really a safe place for me, and I needed safety. My home was emotionally intense and turbulent, and my mother met her husband in a mental hospital. Not a great place to meet a partner, and he was abusive physically and emotionally. But the school and what I learned there, I mean, I don't know who I'd be without it. I mean, maybe I'd be the same person, can't really know. But developing this sense of self right before it got enculturated out of me. And that sense of self was named as, a microcosm of God itself. And Maxwell Maltz, who wrote the book Psycho-Cybernetics, which birthed the positive psychology movement, was a mentor to the founder of my grade school and served on the board. So a lot of the pedagogy reflected his research and point of view, which is what you tell yourself about yourself becomes your experience. So we sang songs every morning about the power we had to create the life we wanted, whatever that was. And boy, did I want to create something different than what I was living. And did. I mean, as a young girl, like my mother, I saw things that other people didn't. And I heard, I could hear people's inner dialogue. You don't want to have access to that when you're 8 years old. And I just commanded out loud at the age of 9 for it all to stop. And it did. And I just wanted to be a normal, kid with safety. And I really took the conventional path. I mean, I was always kind of unconventional. I mean, how could I not be, given my schooling? I mean, my mother at a hello could guess your birthday and articulate your essence, and you haven't even asked for feedback, and she's telling you the truth as she sees it, giving people the water test and the color test. And anyway, she was a lot of fun.
What is the water test?
Oh, we probably don't have time for it. She learned it at WashU from a philosophy professor. It's a value test. Speaks of this journey that this woman takes to meet her lover and the choices she makes along the way. And you, as the participant, then have to judge who shows the most amount of character in the story. And character isn't defined for you. And what you choose ends up, being a evaluation of your value system.
In terms of doing some background research for this conversation, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, she spoke 9 languages. Mm-hmm. She studied at the Sorbonne in France. She was clearly clairvoyant or touched by the divine. She dated a king. Yep. But she was very misunderstood. And I think I read that she would often say that when she spoke about her younger life, people would think of her as a pathological liar. It does sound like an extraordinary life. Is there anything specific that stands out to you when you think about your mum?
She could have just moments of such profound clear seeing. Her capacity to love with no judgment. I mean, I'd have parties in high school and there would be a line 20 kids long, single file, waiting to have one-on-one time with my mother.
Incredible.
Yeah. I mean, she, as a young girl, I mean, at the age of 16, she was chosen by the Red Cross to be part of a 10-member youth delegation that traveled to post-war Europe. This was 1949. I mean, the Great War had just ended. Imagine the devastation she saw being in Paris in 49, right? And that trip changed her. I mean, she was just this, kid in central New York in this poor industrial town called Fulton, to a single mother who was a school teacher, Catholic, the whole Catholic indoctrination. And so that first trip, talk about expanding one's mind. And she comes back to her small town, Friday's like religious instruction, and she asks the priest, quite sweetly, not confrontatively, like, why don't we ever study what other cultures believe? And he said, well, Miss O'Connor, if you're displeased with my teaching, you may go. And she got up and left.
Wow.
She was courageous. She hitchhiked across Denmark at the age of 16. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to put her into words, but she was magical for sure.
I've got to ask you, which king did she date?
Oh, King Hussein of Jordan. So my mom, after she did her postgraduate work at the Sorbonne, which is like the Harvard of France, this is 1957, I think. Not a time where women are going to the Sorbonne for their postgraduate work, right? That's unusual. And so she was finished and she's like, okay, what's next? She didn't want to do the things that society said. You're either a teacher, a nurse, or a wife. And none of those held any interest. And she's like, okay, well, I can speak 9 languages conversationally, like I can get around. I love to travel and make new friends. And I think I'll be a flight attendant. That wasn't the word at the time, it was stewardess. And she went to work for Pan Am. And that was a time when, global travel, I mean, you were a celebrity, if you were a flight attendant. And because of her language gift, she was quickly promoted to fly all the dignitary flights for President Eisenhower. And that's how she met the king. Yeah.
Incredible. You say that you like to remember her before she was ravaged by her connection. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by connection?
Well, I see a lot of people in New Age circles talking about connecting to the universe. You don't want to connect to the universe. There's parts of the universe that you want to connect to, right? The God part. I mean, of course, it's all created by God, but there's other forces at play, right? And my mother, she was just like this open vessel. And so, sometimes, God really ran through her. And I think that's what powered her manifesting a young life that made no rational, just made no rational sense how she even did any of it, right? But it was through the energetic resonance of her that she was able to attract all of that. But in her openness and lack of discipline, there was, other things, I think dark things. She didn't really talk about it, but sometimes she'd spend days in bed. And as she got older, she was angry. I think she was angry mostly about the state of the world. Like, what the F? Like, what a colossal shit show. She hardly left the house, probably for the last, 20 years of her life. So, I wish I could talk to her. I do channel her, but I wish I understood more. But to me, it just felt like when you live that open, right? So energetically, you're attacked. That is a real thing. And, people weren't good to her. Her husbands weren't good to her. Not sure her mother was very good to her. Yeah, so she had a lot of trauma. She gave birth to a stillborn, miscarried many others. She always used to say that I was the only one strong enough to make it. But those losses, right, began to define her.
Yeah. Do you think we often make the mistake of confusing someone that has a clear connection with the divine, the universe, themselves? They've been touched by something. Do you think we often mistake individuals with those types of, let's call them powers, with mental illness? It just occurs to me that over the centuries, I think about the number of people that have probably been persecuted because they've got a gift. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I write about this in my memoir. When shamans visit a mental institution, it's like they find their people. These are healers who, for whatever reason, can't integrate what they're connected to. To be able to heal someone, right? To be able to know certain things, right? You have to also know how to manage that access, how to integrate it, how to turn it on and off and up and down. And I think those that are mentally ill don't know how. And I know for myself, I had a dramatic awakening at 27. The awakening was the easy part. But what came later was kind of like a Jedi Knight initiation. And if I had confided in a mental health professional about what I was experiencing, I would have been drugged, certainly, and probably institutionalized.
Yeah.
But I witnessed my mother. I knew the truth of who she was. I never believed in the diagnosis. And I always used to tell her, Mom, what if everybody else is crazy and you're not the crazy one?
Yeah.
And she used to she's like, oh my gosh, you think so? And I'm like, yeah, actually. Yeah. So, for me, either as a little girl or post awakening, the things that I would see, right? And my direct experience of being pulled out of my body against my will. All of this stuff, which sounds nuts, happened. And I knew I wasn't crazy. And I knew that the process was really about me learning how to feel sovereign, unafraid in the presence of darkness. Right? That's what Luke Skywalker was learning, right? Like, how do I hold the light in the presence of darkness? Well, post awakening, I had a 2-year, crash course in that.
Yeah.
And once I finally could radiate the love of God to these forces that looked demonic, that were trying to do terrible things, guess what? As soon as I could do that, they stopped coming.
Yeah.
And I haven't been visited since. And that was over 30 years ago.
Regan, you had a turbulent childhood, an unusual childhood, a mother who was gifted and different and considered by some as mentally ill, an absent father, a violent stepfather. And this led you to bury your gifts. You call it your inner magic and seek safety in societal norms. What is this magic within that you speak of? And do we all have access to it, or just some of us?
Yeah, great question. The magic is God. Yeah, so we're all made the same. The difference is what's in the way of you consciously unified with that inside of you, right? Like as Yeshua says in Luke 17:21, and I'm not a traditional Christian by any stretch, but anyway, I love Jesus. And he said, the kingdom of God is within you, right? When people close their eyes and I ask them, where is this kingdom? Everyone puts their hands on their heart, right? Nobody goes like this. Nobody says, oh, the kingdom's up here in my head. We have this innate knowing. We may not know what to do with it. We may not know how to access it, but it's always there because it's who you are. It's the truth of who you are. So for me, maybe it's because of my DNA, right? Like what I inherited. Maybe it's partly because of my early schooling that didn't enculturate a divine relationship out of me. Maybe it has something to do with my soul history because we all have one. So I just came in knowing stuff. I don't, I can only speculate as to why. But that relationship with God, the felt sense of it, the voice of it, has always had my back and has always told me the right things to do. And, more recently, if I had not heeded the call to urgently move home, who wants to leave the beach? I lived across the street from Monterey Bay in a gorgeous resort neighborhood, right? And here I am packing up the family and all of our stuff to rural Missouri. People think I'm, cuckoo as Cocoa Puffs, but I knew the truth of it. And then once I got here, getting another directive to go to a doctor urgently, was in both transmissions. So anyway, Barnes Hospital in St. Louis, where I was born, just happens to be one of the best places in the world for aortic valve replacement.
Yeah. I want to get to that story in a minute, but before I let you get into that part of the conversation, why did you feel the need to bury that magic? What was it in your youth that that you couldn't reconcile to the extent that you felt as though you need to bury that. And I think you mentioned this instinct to move towards adopting societal norms. Can you kind of touch
Mm-hmm.
on what those societal norms might have been for you?
Oh, sure. I mean, what I will say, it was at the age of 9. I mean, it was a literal moment in time when this entity, this man that used to follow me around and scare me, was sitting on top of my washing machine as I was dancing down in the basement. And the terror I felt upon seeing him, I don't have words for. That's when I screamed out loud for it all to stop.
Right.
It was too much coming at me. No one to model or teach me what to do with it. Right. My mother could probably understand having the access, right? But couldn't help me figure out what to do, right? So, yeah, it was in response to that one particular entity. And safety, social safety, I was consciously strategic about, because if I was popular and had friends, right, that meant I had safe places to go. I had sleepovers on the weekends. I had, places to go after school, because the one place I never wanted to be was home. So in seeking that, right, most then of the places I went were, kind of these living embodiments of convention, right? I lived in a wealthy suburb, right? I remember eating caviar after school. Like, who does that? Right. And so those norms were, you go to college, you succeed there. Make sure you have your good internship or your, impressive whatever. Be active on campus, do all the things so that you land that really, exciting corporate job, right? It's all about that path. A path, I did, and I did very well, even post awakening, as an executive in Silicon Valley. I had, awake awareness, and I was, in a place that was, pretty incoherent most days.
Antagonistic to that. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, some of it was conscious, a lot of it wasn't. I just tried to find my way. And, I was a rebel. I was not anyone that just naturally obeyed authority or thought of institutions as so I was a bit conflicted. So I was like doing this, thing to be normal while seeing how abnormal all the normal is. But anyway, for whatever reason, at 27, I'm at a national sales meeting, and that same entity that used to terrorize me as a kid came back to visit, and that visit changed the course of my life.
Yeah. Can we talk about that for a minute? Because, people read about spiritual awakenings and they imagine what they might be like. And I'm sure I've got different perspectives on what that looks like. What did that look like for you, that specific event? I mean, you mentioned the return of that entity that you sort of dismissed and banished at 9 years old. But that entity came back at 27. Can you describe that event and that experience?
Oh, yeah, sure. So if smoking Marlboro Lights and drinking Cosmo martinis are what one needs to do, and living and working in an incredibly stressful company, I was managing over $12 million of revenue, like all the things. So if all of that is what one does to prepare for an awakening, well, that was what I was doing. And I was at a national sales meeting, of all places. And my best friend from childhood, who had often been kind of my safe haven growing up, came to my meeting because she was interviewing in San Francisco. And I'm like, stay with me, I'll take care of you. So she's come to the meeting, mid-meeting, and she brings with her a gift for me. And it was the book Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. And I'm, smoking my cigarette and probably downing a shot of vodka before I go down to present to the monsters. That was my point of view at the time. And I opened the book and it's like Christ consciousness, this and that. And I closed it quite quickly. And I looked at her and I said, Heidi, I love you, but I don't have time for this. Okay. So that's the setting.
That's the
all
setup.
All I want is a decent night's sleep. Heidi goes out to party in the city. I'm like, no, I need to go to bed. And I do. She's still out whenever it was that I woke up, but I woke up terrified. Like I knew someone was in my room. I could feel it. And I opened my eyes, and sure enough, at the end of my bed, standing with his arms closed, kind of studying me, was that same entity. I don't know why I responded this way. Maybe part of it was because I was kind of fighting the good fight at work. I was courageous. I was a truth teller. So maybe that had something to do with it. But I literally just sat up in bed, looked at this entity, this man, for lack of a better word, and just said, it's you. It's only you. I'm not afraid of you. And I literally went back to bed. I didn't even open my eyes again to see if he was still there. Something about my sovereign response, though again, I'm speculating. How do I know? When I woke up the next morning, all I could feel was the love of God. The most profound love I don't have words for. Words don't work. I had nothing but forgiveness for my stepfather, for my mother, for my father, for the bad executives at work, like all the things. I just had nothing but the felt sense of a love that I can't really describe. And I didn't know how long this feeling was going to last, right? And all I wanted to do was talk to my mother. And I couldn't reach her. The only person I could reach by phone was my abusive stepfather. And I had nothing but love for him and told him so. Told him that I forgave him, told him that the only reason we exist in this form is to learn how to love, to truly learn how to embody the love of God, right? That's what all the master teachers have said. Must be something to it. And upon him hearing me and feeling what I was running energetically, he dropped the phone and came back a couple of seconds later and said, well, Blonde Beauty, I don't have an explanation for this, but a golden eagle just landed on the crabapple tree in the backyard. And then he comes back I hear the phone kind of banging around. And he said, now there's a red fox at the base of this tree looking up at the eagle. Well, he's Comanche. He's other things too, but he's got Comanche in him. And, in that tradition, right, in that lineage, the eagle is the divine and the red fox is a noble messenger. So from that moment until now, it's been over 30 years. I can't even believe he's still alive. He's in his mid-80s. He's been a kind and gentle man. So that transference changed him. And I changed too.
Incredible. I've got to ask you, you mentioned that this experience occurred prior to you giving a presentation to the monsters. I'd love to know, how did that presentation go? Because that's either going to be the most amazing presentation they've ever seen or perhaps the most unusual presentation they've ever seen. Did that go ahead?
I don't remember. Yes, it did.
Okay.
I do remember that evening there was like a formal event and I was standing getting ready to dance. And one of the execs, very high up, not even within my company, literally came out to the dance floor, looked at me and said, who are you and where did you come from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you mentioned earlier that was really the starter's gun going off? It was, the real work, the real discipline occurred over the next couple of years. What did the subsequent years look like after that experience for you?
I think it was a slow fade. I wasn't disciplined really back then. I was disciplined enough through the post-awakening initiation, right, to not lose my mind. So I'm grateful for the capacity that I had. But my discipline didn't come till much later, probably not until my mid 40s. Because again, due to circumstance, I was I was a single mom. I finally got the courage to leave my first husband, who I love, but boy, that was a hard, chaotic relationship because he very much reflected the wounding of my childhood. I fell in love with him when I was 20. Anyway, living in Santa Cruz as a single mother, what is required of you to live comfortably in one of the most expensive places in the world is no joke. So, a lot of my energy back then was going to providing for my two sons. I, needed to make sure they could, go to college and do all the things without debt, right? And so that was on me to do. I still, like anytime I had trouble at work, I'd pull over in my company car and meditate and pray for an answer. So I was still, integrated in my understanding and would show up for myself, aligned with that. But like who I am now, the discipline I have now, the understanding that I carry now, is different, than back then.
Yeah. How did you integrate that experience with continuing to work in that industry? Did that You mentioned that you were filled with a sense of love and the divine and forgiveness for all, including, some hard charging executives in the company you worked for. Did that make life easier as a corporate exec in Silicon Valley or more difficult?
Oh, I wasn't that yet. So,
Okay.
yeah, I wasn't that yet. What I chose to do after my awakening, I conceived 2 days later my first son and knew it, greeted him as his spirit entered my body. No, I quit. I quit that
Yeah.
job. And yeah, I quit that job. Yeah, definitely. And was very much a truth teller. That's one thing. When you know that you're eternal and divine, there's not a lot that scares you, including speaking truth to power. So I did a lot of that and then took my maternity leave, knowing that I was, quitting at the end of it, and did just that. And, soon after that, I was first working with a woman named Dr. Peggy Jenkins. She wrote a beautiful book called The Joyful Child and Nurturing Spirituality in Children. She and I became business partners, and I was, representing her beautiful work. And then soon after that, Joseph Chilton Pierce, who was friends with this woman, recommended that we check out the HeartMath Institute. Peggy was in her 70s. She didn't want to leave Sedona. So I'm like, I'll go. And found myself staff there pretty soon after that.
Yeah. That's the perfect setup for my next question. How did you stumble upon heart math? And I'm sure that there'll be people listening to this that don't know what heart math or heart coherence is. Are you able to give us a definition?
Yeah, sure. So heart math started in the early 90s. And so, a lot of people now know what like heart rate variability is. Like they measure their HRV from their Apple Watch or whatever. Well, back in the early 90s, it was heart math that brought awareness of the importance of heart rate variability and how the rhythm of the heart is really determined by the emotions we feel. And the emotions we feel not only change how the heart behaves, But this integrated relationship between the heart and the brain through the vagus nerve and other afferent nerves really makes a huge difference in terms of the quality of our thinking and our capacity to access, our prefrontal lobes. If you're angry, you can't do that. That's why you tend to say something dumb. So anyway, the Heart Math Institute was really on the forefront of understanding the heart's unique role and how elevated emotion, love, gratitude, can do magical things for the heart and the rest of the system. So they basically proved it. There's over 400 clinical studies now of what they've been up to. And they developed methods, right, to enable you to self-regulate emotionally. Remember, that was something I needed to learn early on. So they had really developed kind of the framework for that, simple techniques to learn to help you self-regulate in the moment and ideally get you closer to God, though they don't really say that, but that's what it does. And they also developed technology, not when I was staff there. It was just in its infancy. But a lot of people think of heart math as the technology where you can see your heart rhythm in real time and understand how much coherence you're running. So coherence has to do with that relationship between heart and brain. How coherent is it? Well, if your heart is incoherent because you're pissed off or resentful or all the things, right? You're sending an incoherent signal to the brain and the brain can't make sense of it. So what positive emotion like love and gratitude does is sends a coherent signal to the brain and ultimately gets the brain and the heart and the rest of your organ systems in sync.
Yeah.
And we all have had moments where we, kind of feel that way. So this is, how to do it when you need it.
Mm. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines the word coherence as follows: the integration of diverse elements. In fact, for me, it brings to mind other words like intuition and discernment. Do you think you'd be alive today without coherence, without the intuitive instinct to not just hear a voice tell you to move home and see a doctor, but actually to do something about it?
Oh, no, I'd very much be dead. And in fact, there was no medical explanation after my open heart surgery of how I was alive prior to it. I had less than 0.2 centimeters for blood to flow through my aortic valve. And if you're a cardiologist or a heart surgeon, that's considered not enough flow to sustain life. And yet I was teaching yoga on my back lawn. So yeah, explain that.
Yeah. Can we talk about that moment for you? Because of course, I saw a doctor 2 weeks ago. I can't imagine how I would respond to a medical professional telling me that I was going to die. Do you have any recollection of that conversation and how you responded to it?
I felt nothing but peace. I don't have any fear of death. I learned post-awakening how to leave my body at will and return to it, so when you know how to do that, you don't fear the death of your body because you're not your body. The yogis, certainly know this. So yeah, even in my prayer, once I learned it, I didn't ask God to heal me. I asked for the highest good. The highest good could have meant my own physical death. Like, how do I know? I wasn't afraid. I had compassion, certainly, for my children, for my husband, who aren't yet on the path to know without any reservation that they're eternal, right? And that death is not something to fear. In fact, I don't want to die because I still love my life and all the things, but I'm looking forward to it. Talk about being able to be out of this confining thing back into, that kind of energetic presence. And that's the other thing people need to understand. Like, whatever your consciousness is when you're alive is kind of where you go. So don't think that it's like this magical event where, suddenly everything's unicorns and rainbows. It doesn't quite work that way. But yeah, I was at peace. And I was really drawn to Yeshua, to Jesus. I was not a Christian, and I'm still not, for reasons I write about. But he was somebody I really wanted to understand. And so I was really drawn to not just reading, the canons again in the New Testament, but reading the things that the church didn't want anyone to read, right? So the Gnostic Gospels, the things that were hidden in a jar, protected, just like today, if you want to know the truth, follow the things that are being censored, and you're probably closer to truth than what is being freely given to you as information. So, yeah, I just wanted to connect with that quality of love that he so perfectly personified. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
And then, had my aortic valve changed.
So what was the plan?
Replaced.
So you had a 2 millimeter opening in your aortic valve,
Well, they
which is
didn't
not
know
enough
that
to.
yet. They
Right.
didn't know that yet. All they knew was from the imaging was that it was severely calcified and that they needed to replace it as quickly as possible. It wasn't until the surgery itself that, I mean, I wrote about this, like the operating room nurse who became a friend told me later, she said, Regan, we all knew something profound was happening in the operating room that day. We didn't talk about it, but we all felt it. And she was like, and I'm forever changed. This was the nurse. Dr. Ralph Damiano had to scrape, bone off my heart for over 2 hours. And it was the worst aortic valve he'd ever seen. And he runs everything, at Barnes. So when he came to see me on my day of discharge, which was just 4 days after open heart surgery, he playfully tapped my leg and just said, Regan, there is no medical explanation of you. I don't know how you were alive. I don't know how you walked. I don't know how you did any of it. And I said, do you believe in Jesus Christ? He said, I do. I said, that's the only explanation I have. And then again, it's the truth. My scar healed, and it healed in the shape of a crucifix. And I showed that to my surgeon. He wept and he said, well, Regan, that's another miracle because it's a vertical cut. Yeah, so I don't know if you can see it, but.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so that's a little
Crazy.
of the magic.
Crazy. I want to quote your friend and co-founder of the Heart and Math Institute, Bruce Cryer, in reference to your memoir, Tragic Magic. Regan Caruthers' story is true, authentic, raw, and filled, and I love this line, filled with the hard-won inspiration of a life dedicated to the discovering of the truth of who she is. I love that. I love that hard-won inspiration of a life dedicated to discovering the truth of who she is. Regan, is the real comeback, your real comeback, all real comebacks, is the real comeback reconnecting with the truth of ourselves? Is it unraveling lives that were built for survival? Is it learning to live in alignment with our authentic selves?
Sure, but your authentic self is your divine self, right? You can't get to any of this without God. And I know God is a triggering word, sadly, for people. But it's a triggering word because of the humans,
Yeah.
not because of God,
Yeah, it's been
right?
conscripted, that word, hasn't it? It's unfortunate because, we've associated that word with a guy with a beard in the sky, and it can mean so many other things.
It doesn't mean that at all. Yeah. So to me, the point of incarnation is each time to get closer and closer to conscious union with God, right? That's what yoga means, right? In Sanskrit means union. Ideally, any religion or path brings you to the truth of who you are, right? I mean, someone like Yeshua really was trying to teach us that. And boy, talk about a guy whose teachings have gotten really, changed up over time. Most people follow the teachings of a man named Paul in Christianity, who
Yeah.
didn't know Jesus, regardless of what he claimed. Yeah. So to me, it's all about that. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that every day that I live, I'm in this samadhi state. No, but I know when I'm not, and I know how to get back.
Yeah.
So,
How do we get there? I mean, you mentioned that our authentic self is really our divine self. How do we find that part of us? For those of us who haven't really had that experience, how do we learn to live, or much less discover our authentic selves?
well, you got to get comfortable getting quiet. Um, yeah. So if you want to know God, it's like, how about try to create the inner conditions for that relationship, right? And this is why I love yoga so much. Not yoga as people think of it, but true yoga, right? The 8 limbs. So the first limb of yoga is all about ethics. Like you can't know God if you're lying, right? Stealing, like all the things. So the yamas kind of read like the 10 Commandments. The niyamas, then these observances of self, how you treat yourself. And discipline, tapas, is one of the niyamas, because again, can't get there without discipline. And then, the third limb, asana, which is just about the physical practice. That's what people think of as yoga. But in Sanskrit, it just means to sit. So that physical practice is just to make meditation easier, right? If you have more kind of fluidity in your body, if there's more ease, it makes that quiet, cultivating that quiet easier. Learning, how to work with the breath, how to concentrate, all of that is important. That's why true yoga practice can be that playbook for people. But if they don't want to do that, get quiet and get grateful. So think of gratitude or the felt sense of love kind of as energetic scaffolding that'll get you closer to God, right? So learning how to do that, learning how to bring love and witness to all the traumatized parts of you, right? I have a loving witness process that I made up for myself that I teach, but we need to tend, right, to our wounds because our wounds have a point of view and they're not wrong, right? My inner toddler who can't trust anyone isn't wrong to believe that. But what she does need is to be loved and to be acknowledged. I don't need to change her mind. I just need to show up for her.
Yeah.
And in so doing and loving her, intensity of response to things softens. So, yeah, you got to get quiet. And, there's a lot in this modern world designed to keep you distracted. I mean, after my awakening, like literally the day after, I was told 2 things. I was told a lot of things, but 2 things: eat only organic food and disconnect from all media. So that idea that, stop poisoning yourself, harder to know God in a poisoned vessel, and stop attending to this messaging designed to keep you afraid and disconnected. So I didn't have a TV for over a decade after that.
Wow. Again, you've set me up with the perfect next question, because I was going to ask you about the importance of discipline in a spiritual practice. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. I mean, like I always say to my students, you wouldn't pick up a violin and expect to be able to play it, right? You know that, no, there's some work to do. Well, that's true. Like, you don't have to earn your divinity, but it is important to create the inner conditions to know it. And that's where the importance of discipline comes, right? Motivation is like, I'm motivated. Discipline is you do it, particularly when you don't want to, right? So that discipline of sitting, connecting to the breath, asking for help, right? Like your guides, your angels, God, like there's so much wanting to help you, but it's kind of like the prime directive in Star Trek. They're not going to do that without your permission. So ask, get quiet, focus on love. Maybe you've had a moment where you didn't quite know what it was, words didn't work, but you felt this profound okayness. Maybe it's a moment in nature. Maybe it's holding your newborn grandchild or your child or a time with a pet. I mean, I don't know, but take those peak moments and utilize them. Remember them, reconnect to the felt sense of it, and learn how to stay there. Like, stay in this connected relationship with love and gratitude. See how long you can do it, right? For most people, that head's going to come in and it's like, well, what am I doing for dinner? And I can't believe he said that over lunch, like all the things. So you get, more self-aware about what's running up here, right? Quiet does that. And ideally, you learn how to self-generate the energy of love, how to connect from your heart to the love that God has, right? That is, right? And bring that in. I mean, that was my spiritual practice. I think that's why I was alive. Because literally every day I would do my very best to connect to the love of God and literally bring the energy into my heart. Not knowing how much my heart actually needed that. Yeah. So does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that's really insightful. It occurs to me that we, the collective we, human beings, we spend a lot of our lives running away from difficult things or avoiding difficult things and avoiding suffering and avoiding adversity. I'm interested, Regan, to get your perspective on the role of suffering and adversity, having lived the life that you've lived.
It's the teacher, if you'll let it. Right? And I say this all the time. We can't heal what we don't acknowledge. So that radical honesty, that radical unpacking is really important. Understand who's living in there. Honor what they've known. And do that inner parenting, right? Bringing that quality of love, the energetics of that love to those parts of you. Yeah. I mean, for whatever reason, in this dimension, contrast is the teacher.
Yeah, that's interesting. The other question I had, I'm kind of looking to get us onto the final straight now in terms of the conversation. I've got a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
In terms of your own practice, your own spiritual practice, can you give me a flavor as to what that looks like? Do you have a routine? What are you doing? What does the Regan Caruthers practice look like?
I pray all day long. It's like little micro prayers, micro meditations. I always come down my driveway to my yoga center. So I will sit either on a meditation cushion or on my sofa with a little help from some pillows to have a nice straight spine. And I just drop into my heart. I can do that really quickly, just kind of drop into presence, feel conscious union with God, the Christ consciousness, if you will, the energy of the Christ. Not every day, but most days. Yeah. And I spend most of my time alone in this building. I recently learned that I have an aneurysm in my aorta and another in my brain. And those are fixable, but I'm really trying to refine as best I can this relationship that matters to me, right? My relationship with God matters to me really more than any others. And that's hard for the humans, right? But it's the truth. So I spend as much time as I can connected to the energy of love, but not human love. Not that there's anything wrong with human love, but that's not the love I'm talking about, like love with the big L.
Yeah. For those people that are beginning to get a sense of their own disconnection with themselves and the world, where should they start? Should it simply be a case of finding solitude, becoming grateful? What is a simple practice for someone who is just beginning to get a felt sense that they have an inner life? Is there anything that
There's
comes to mind?
so much to say. Spend more time outside. Like, honestly, more time in nature. That's really important. Have a gratitude practice, right? What I love about gratitude is there's something that they can feel grateful for. So start there. So just, I don't know, have a little dedicated place in your home. Some people make, their closets into their sacred space because they can shut the door. But anyway, just create a space. Doesn't have to be elaborate, or you don't have to put any money into it, but just a place in your home or outside on your lawn that when you see it with your eyes, it reminds you to practice. And then, just get quiet, connect to your breath. Like, what a miracle, this breath that we have that we don't pay attention to, that we don't necessarily feel grateful for. Feel gratitude for something and see how long in the quiet you can stay connected to it, to the felt sense of it without interruption.
Yeah.
And then once you do, aim higher. What's another emotion, another energetic moment that you've known, right? That has felt amazing. So see, how long can I hang out in that feeling without interruption? And then ask, your angels and your guides and God or Jesus. I mean, Buddha, I don't care, someone that's been here before who has been exceptional in their understanding of God. Because energy doesn't die, right? You learn that in high school physics, the law of conservation, right? Energy can't be created or destroyed. So that's true of Jesus, of Buddha, of Krishna, of all these teachers. Their spirit, their energy is still here. So ask for their help.
Yeah.
you know?
I do want to ask you this one last question, because as someone that has lived and existed in the world of fast-paced corporates and particularly software technology companies, I'm interested to understand how you reflect upon your time in that industry. I mean, you mentioned earlier that part of the reason for incarnation is to give us contrast.
Mm-hmm.
And when you contrast that part of your life with the life that you have now, what stands out for you in terms of the time you spent in corporate?
I don't know, compassion, not just for myself, but for everyone else. Like, again, I don't know what their inner lives were like. They didn't share that with me. Um, but I don't know. I look back on it and I think, like, what a lost bunch.
Yeah,
Thinking that any of that matters. I mean, it matters to be able to feed yourself and house your, like all the things. I'm not saying that. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with making money. Though Jesus did say on the Sermon on the Mount, you can't, love money and God at the same time.
yeah,
Um, I don't know why wealth tends to have this corruptive influence. I often think about that. Like, why is that? When I think about the $80 million that Mark Andreessen, the creator of the first internet browser, gave one of the startups I worked for. Like, imagine the good that money could do.
yeah. Is there a danger of exuding some level of spiritual superiority, do you think, when you think about individuals, colleagues, friends, associates, family members maybe that are still very much buried in the material and are motivated by the material? Um, I worry sometimes that, there's part of me that, because I am aware that we all have an inner life. Now, this is not to comment on to what extent I'm feeding and watering my own inner life, but simply the fact that I know that there is an inner world that frankly is way more important than anything we can do with our time in a material realm. I do sometimes find myself thinking, I know better. I know better than them. Um, how would you suggest that someone like me, for example, deal with those thoughts or considerations?
I don't know. I mean, what I would say is the energy of you, right? If you really want to be of service to people, love them. Doesn't mean you have to you don't have to like them, right? You don't have to, yeah, but I mean, that's kind of where the rubber hits the road. I mean, I do have my moments, particularly when the television is on, where I'm just like, oh my God, this is all so absurd. I mean, it just seems so absurd to me. Yeah. I mean, I tend to kind of just laugh and name it, but yeah. I mean, I understand it. I understand, when you are awake, it's hard not to, want to scream, oh my gosh, why don't you guys see it? But I trust the process, right? So you don't ever want to take karma away from somebody. I mean, they're going to learn what they learn, how they learn it, when they learn it. And it's really none of your business.
Yeah, yeah. Regan, it's been so great getting to know you and talking to you. How do people get in contact with you? Obviously, you offer a range of coaching services. You're a yoga teacher. I mean, you're so many things. You're an author. How do people get in contact with you? And what are the areas in which you perhaps could help them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to do this. I've been spending a lot of time writing on Substack. So if you just simply search my name on Substack, and I don't charge, right? So it's a free subscription. So they may, get some value out of some of my musings on Substack. My memoir, if they want to just read a story that I think they may not be able to relate to all of it, but they'll relate to the mess, right? They'll
Yeah.
relate to the humanness that I don't hold back in communicating about myself. If they want, my help from a kind of a spiritual practice perspective, like how do I create a practice and how do I stick with the practice? I do, for a limited number of people, I do what's called inner life coaching. So they can go on regancaruthers.com, go to that part of the website, and schedule a free discovery call with me, where they talk to me about their goals. I talk to them about how I approach it, and we kind of feel into the resonance of that relationship. So they could do that. I've got lots of videos on Instagram. God told me to get off Instagram a number of months ago, so I haven't put anything new there. But on my grid, you can find a lot of videos and things that might be useful. Yeah, so my website, my book, my writings on Substack, and, a coaching relationship. And if they happen to be anywhere near St. Louis, they can come for free yoga on Saturday mornings.
I love it. I love it. Hey, just quickly on social media, you mentioned that God sent you another message and said, time to hop off.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on social media? I mean, it's something that it's so pervasive. As a teacher, it strikes me that it's also probably a useful tool for you as well. How do you reconcile the push-pull of social media?
I don't. I mean, how I'm reconciling it right now is I'm just not participating much. I do find the things that matter to me to talk about, I can't do in a 60-second reel on Instagram. Yeah, so this long form of writing and sharing my writing just feels better. I mean, I was investing a lot of my time trying to get a message out on Instagram. I mean, I developed a lot of followers. They're probably pruning off. I haven't noticed. But I had, I don't know, over 13,000 people for a while. Yeah, I mean, I just don't think our nervous systems are designed for it. Kind of like being a little girl and having too much access, right, to too many things.
Yeah.
I think, sadly, that's what this technology does. And our nervous systems aren't developed for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I the reason I ask that is because on a deeply felt level, I feel the same thing. I feel there's something that's certainly in terms of my relationship with it. There's something here that I can't put my finger on, but it doesn't feel good.
Yep.
Yeah. So interesting. Regan, thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this. I'm so grateful that we stumbled upon each other. I'm so grateful that you're a truth teller. Truth telling is it's courageous work. And whenever I kind of sniff out a truth teller, I kind of went, "Oh, let's have a conversation and let's talk about difficult things." So thank you for your willingness to talk about difficult things.
Sure.
And I'm particularly pleased and grateful to hear about. I think the way it was expressed was the unraveling of your life. The courage to unravel that and examine your life, I think, is a great example to both myself and anyone listening. So thank you for all the work you do and your open heart. And I look forward to continuing to follow your work.
Oh, thank you so much. It was wonderful to have this time with you. So thanks.
Thanks for being on, Regan.